and welcome back to episode 24 of Pursuing the Perfect Pint podcast. And this week, alongside our usual market update discussion, we'll be hearing a different perspective on how you can have a long-term commitment to malting barley variety development.
Yep. Well, I guess first of all, Danielle, episode 24 is significant because there's usually 24 beers in a case. We, we used to call it in Canada a 2-4. So that was everyone knew what that was. If you said stop by and pick me up at 2-4, there was no doubt that it was going to be beer because everything was focused. So this is quite a symbolic time. Episode 2-4. So
I didn't even know that, Brent. Oh, there you are. Welcome to
a little touch of Canadiana, maybe.
There you are. So I should have done the intro a bit differently. Welcome to a rather pivotal moment in the podcast
Monumental.
history.
I would even go
Monument.
so far as monumental. Certainly the people that I grew up with would get that pretty.
Brilliant. So what do we have to look forward to this week, Brent, as we from the market update side?
Yeah, well, I guess two things. I've joked about it, Danielle, in a way, but not so much. I talked about me being a weather person
Yeah.
and also maybe a news anchor. So I guess if I kept those two themes, the weather person view would be, in short, it has rained in
Yep.
important parts. Unfortunately, it's rained quite a bit in Western Europe. Very beneficial to the crop. Not good for getting out on patios and enjoying a pint, but generally the weather has been good.
Yeah.
But the news anchor part of this would be same old story. There's been no resolution to things
No.
in the Middle East. Maybe even some risk that things get escalated again. So crude oil prices are up. It's brought grain markets slightly higher. Nothing too major. But I think generally we're just playing the Groundhog Day thing all over again. It's just watching the weather, waiting for some resolution in the Middle East. A peace deal, I think, would be a really big step, but we've said that before, just happening much slower than anyone anticipated. So fundamentally, I guess the crops look good, probably better than they were when we talked on the last
Yeah.
podcast. So going the right direction, but these geopolitical factors are pushing it. The other separate topic altogether, and we did touch on it briefly, but the Q1 results from the brewers, as you dive into that more deeply, generally pretty good. It's positive. So we have the major brewers are between 0.5 and 1% improvement in beer volumes. A big market like Germany and Europe had a really terrible January, but they were up 9.4%. I think it was in March. So there's these green shoots, as I call them, are there. So I guess there's lots going on. Uncertainty is still elevated. Some green shoots of maybe a recovery in global beer volume. So that's mildly optimistic, but everything is kind of overshadowed at the moment by geopolitical and weather. So I guess, yeah, weather person, news anchor, and pursuing the perfect pint.
Can you add one more hat onto that, Brent? Put your old procurement hat on. So if you're a maltster now looking to secure barley for next year, what would you be thinking?
Yeah, I don't think there's a big upside to barley in general, right? Okay, there are the geopolitical aspects, but fundamentally, like, we have a pretty big corn supply globally, a very big wheat supply globally. So they're not directly impactful on malting barley, but they do indirectly impact it. So when you see the grain markets in general have a very good supply base, then I don't see much big upside to prices, and especially when you factor in all the weather comments I mentioned. So
Yeah.
I think we're in a pretty good place. So to that question, there's a small premium for crop 26, procurement wise, and from a risk management perspective, I would probably point people to locking in some of these prices when prices are relatively stable, because we just don't know what lies ahead. So I would de-risk the business if I was a brewer or a maltster, and taking some of that off the table. Brewer is probably the better example. That if you're thinking about price stability for calendar year 2027, I would think strongly about trying to take some risk off the table.
Which kind of ties into the conversation we had last week around how contracting is done in the US and the sort of benefits that's sort of brought to malting barley. So the message from the market update, Brent, this week is think about de-risking, and then wait and see what happens next.
Yeah, exactly. And be prepared for I guess just more of the same. Just uncertainty is higher, which means volatility is higher. So no calm waters on the immediate horizon.
And next up, Brent, was a fascinating discussion you had at the conference with the team from Limagrain, talking about how they see the long-term development of malting barley, and an area that they have clearly put a stake in the ground to say Limagrain are supporting it.
Yeah, so I think a good discussion. Let's maybe run that recording with Anne-Marie and Renz, and we'll come back around and wrap it up. Okay, well, welcome back. We're in Lisbon for the RMI conference, and we've got our friends from Limagrain here, so Anne-Marie and Renz, and they'll take a moment here to introduce themselves and introduce Lima. But first of all, thank you for taking a few minutes to join us, of course, in Lisbon, but also to talk a little bit about what's going on in the plant breeding world. So maybe start with some brief introductions, Anne-Marie, a little bit of what you do and what your role is at
So I was a malting barley breeder in the past, but now I moved to, I'm in charge of development of barley varieties all over the world, but also other wheat and barley varieties, not just malt, for Limagrain.
Yes, and I'm Rens van der Walt. I'm originally from South Africa. Studied molecular biology and biotechnology, started as a plant breeder for Limagrain, then moved over to the barley sector, where I was a barley breeder for AB InBev, and then also taking over their commercial variety release in Africa. And then last year, August, I joined Limagrain again as the global malting barley business manager, where I'm trying to translate what the industry needs into our breeding activities.
So from the Cape of South Africa to France, so you've just gone through a pretty significant move.
Yes, no, absolutely. Me and my family are still settling into the French lifestyle, but very happy with the move and very excited about the future.
Yeah, very good. As we were preparing for this, so maybe Anne-Marie, to you, Limagrain has an interesting structure where you come from. So, and I guess part of that question is, why is malting barley important to you? So maybe tell us a little bit of Limagrain and how you got to this stage in life and why malting barley is so important to you.
So Limagrain is a co-op, so it means that it belongs to farmers, very local farmers in the center of France, and they're really something important for them is that they have inherited farm from their parents and they want to transmit these farms to their children, to their grandchildren. So being sure that the farms continue to be efficient is important. And in this part, rotation is a key point. You can't only have maize on your farm or sunflower. You need also cereals, and malting barley, and barley is part of it. That's why it's so important for Limagrain that we continue to be active, to invest and to be present in all these segments, including malting barley.
Yeah, that's important. And that's important because I think we have to not forget that in the big world, malting barley and barley is a very small crop. I call it a niche crop. So we have to keep that in perspective. But your point is...
But it's not. For Limagrain, it's clearly an important crop. It's part of the strategic crops, among others. But it's part, because this diversity is key for farmers. So it's key for Limagrain. So it's not a niche crop as the sense of... We continue to invest, and it's very important. Rens is there to prove that we continue to invest. We build a team on malting barley, especially to be present in Europe, but also everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and how it fits in the rotation, I think, is the point that even if you put it, as I described it, in the big picture, it's relatively small, but it's very important in the rotation, and barley has an important rotation. And that's what drives, I think, that long-term commitment from Limagrain to stay in the malting barley specifically, because it comes back to where your roots are, if I say it that way.
Yes, and the concept of value chain is also important for Limagrain. We, from the beginning, the seeds to the farmers growing the seeds, providing the commodities, to the transformation, first and second transformation. It's a really important spirit and something very important for the value at the farm at the end.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that this week in the presentations. And I would say to Limagrain and your peers, so across the whole plant breeding community, I think, generally speaking, we're in a very good position globally. We see good variety development. We can see that in the yields and the production that we result, and even with climatic impacts and so on, that we are in a pretty good position. One of my questions will be, can we keep that going forward? Because it's quite important that we maintain that upward trending yield curve and that disease resistance, because the commercial reality of the situation is there's a very small premium for malting barley over feed barley. So that, from a farmer's perspective, is an impact, and your co-op owner farmers would be living that every day. But as part of that, you need new varieties adapted. You've mentioned that before. Traditionally, very conservative, I'll say. We could maybe say more bluntly, quite slow in the adopting of new varieties, and that slows things down, and it does maybe hold back a little bit. So that would be one area, I think, if I could have a wish, it would be what could be done to maybe try to speed that up a little bit, because you would have the genetics to back that up.
You have many questions in one.
Yeah.
But we can bring some elements to answer to that. First, yes, we will continue to work on yield. Definitely. It's a key factor for a farm to be profitable. And it's also very important for the ones buying barley that it is affordable. So barley has to be competitive, malting barley against feed barley, but also against versus other crops. So we will continue to work on that. It is challenging because climate is changing, for instance, but we have solutions. And it's something very important. It's not, we put huge investments in breeding. It's cutting edge technologies. We are always looking at all the other crops, which are major crops that are paving the way of new technologies, new ways to do breeding. And with malting barley, we just follow this trend because we are using the same tools, and it's very important that we continue to deliver this value for farmers. So it can be in disease tolerance, could be adaptation to drought or frost, different climatic conditions and these elements. But also we want to provide added value for the chain, so for the industry. What does the malter need? What do the maltsters need? What do the brewers need? What can we do to help them in their process? Because they have also their own challenges.
Yep.
So it's to improve the barley, improve yield. You will see in the presentation we will make on Thursday that genetic progress on yield exists, is real. We have made big jumps in yield. We will continue to work on that, but also to work for the whole industry.
And I think that adaptation of the variety, as you mentioned, it's quite slow. The whole industry is pivotal and very important. We can make genetic progress in the lab, in the field where we do selections as a breeding company, but if it's not accepted or adopted by the industry, you don't see that genetic going. And that is what is so important. It needs to go to market. And I think if that can happen, obviously the future of the chain will improve significantly. And collaboration, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of collaboration required. One key takeaway from this discussion could be that we can be somewhat optimistic about the future, because we do know that there's lots more that can be done. There are some things maybe that are barriers that we have to try to get over, but that will also be solved through collaboration. That farmers working with maltsters and working with brewers, you can get there. We can argue how fast we could get and all that, but I guess as long as we're moving in the right direction, I think we have a chance.
You've said a very important word, collaboration. It's key because we'll have to work together to understand what is needed by farmers. We can have an idea, pretty good idea, but also the industry, that they could just stop or adopt faster varieties and stop using old varieties because they will understand and see what they can bring to their industry. It's also important that, yes, we are working for farmers at first, but the industries, we have to demonstrate and we have to exchange and work together so that they can see how we can bring solutions to them, their issues.
And you've said it a couple of times, Anne-Marie, and I'm totally with you. Everyone's got focus areas, and I think from a whole supply chain perspective, farmers, yield is important and disease resistant. Maltsters are trying to reduce water use or maybe reduce energy through the maltings, and brewers as well. They want malting varieties that perform well in the brewery so they can be as efficient as possible. So you're right. You have a challenging job because you've got kind of three stakeholders with quite different demands. Not to say that's impossible to fix, but it's hard to keep everybody happy at the same time, like life in general. But I guess we all have challenges, so I guess that's kind of normal. But one last question is one of the other big topics that we'll talk about this week is we continue to work very hard in progressing sustainability, and we're doing a lot of work in regenerative agriculture. A bit to your earlier point that for the long-term health of the farm and the soil, there's lots of things being done today and a lot more that can be done. How has that changed your job from a plant breeding perspective? What new elements has that brought into your thinking in those tools you talked about? I guess when you think about what people are doing in sustainability and ag practices, has that changed your approach massively, or is it just one more thing you consider in the
No,
mix?
we were always concerned by better disease tolerance, which is part of, reducing chemicals use, part of sustainability. But let's consider sustainability as a whole. It's not just regen agriculture. How can we continue to grow barley and produce malt and beer in the future, in 50 years? Will we continue to have this chain existing? And it's what means sustainability. So we continue to work on targets such as improving yield, improving disease tolerance. Now we have to adapt to climate modifications, erratic climates. So it's something that we take into account. But we also have to take care of sustainability at the industry level with energy saving. What can they do? Water saving. It's something that we consider more at the industry level. We continue to do what we were doing in the past in breeding, better varieties, more yield, more disease tolerant. The only thing we added is this envirotyping topic, which is how can a variety will react in very specific climatic conditions.
So there's, I guess, it hasn't added any high level of complexity to what you're doing. It's an additional.
It's part of our job.
Yeah, it's part of your job. Yeah. Anything to add?
No, and just to translate that to the whole industry of what we can improve and how we improve, and then adoption yet again becomes incredibly important. That variety does show it has nitrogen use efficiency, or it can save water and electricity. How quickly can it be adapted to really see that change in the industry? And like Annemarie mentioned, sustainability is a very big word, but at the end of the day, if we talk about sustainability of the beer and the malt sector, it comes down to, will we still make beer and malt in 100 years? That sustainability comes down from barley right through the whole chain up to the beer.
Yeah, 100 years seems like a long time. At least 15 to 20, as far as I'm concerned. But yes, I think for the next generation, 100 years would be a good target. And the children and grandchildren of your farmer owners at Limagrain would be there. So, well, we have lots of these things to talk about this week. Thanks for taking some time. Really looking forward to you helping deliver that message this week.
Yes, sure.
And we keep moving in a positive direction. There are challenges, but I think it's good to hear the confidence and the optimism that we can get from.
And we continue to invest in barley breeding. We think it's the beginning of everything for the world chain, and something that, as a company, Limagrain, we deeply believe in it. Genetic progress is there for the world chain.
And because it's the Perfect Pint podcast, we would normally finish with that, but we've already started the pursuit of the Perfect Pint because we had the small reception last night. So we're starting that. So this week we'll be doing some efforts to pursue the Perfect Pint here in Lisbon. So look forward to sharing that journey with you as well. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It's interesting, Brent. I always used to have to think about the breeders as being the slow and kind of long-term people and not much sort of energy. But actually, all I heard from that was pressure on the maltsters and the farmers to adopt these new varieties quicker. They've got good varieties. They want to see that sort of genetic gain translated, but the whole supply chain is not moving at the pace that it needs to.
Yeah, I would add to that the brewers. You are one, and I would say I would start with that, and it's not a criticism. I think we know that brewers generally around the world are quite traditional in the sense that they don't want to change too fast because you're obviously very sensitive to maintaining your beer quality and all those things. So everyone would understand that. I think one of the key messages that came from both Anne-Marie and Renz is, and it's encouraging because they talked about how they've got a lot more they can deliver. So the genetic, I was, in their words, kind of the genetic pipeline is there and ready to do even more. And I guess that's quite good to hear that. I guess they were just trying in a nice way to say it would be helpful if we could somehow get the whole supply chain maybe to move a little bit faster. And I guess, yes, farmers would have a role, and maltsters, I would say a big part of it would come to brewers and distillers to grab those new varieties with better disease resistance and better yields, because that will help the whole supply chain. And I guess what we didn't talk about a lot in the interview, but I guess it's almost an accepted given, is the quality aspect of all the new varieties will have to be as good as the preceding ones, or it wouldn't pass to this point. So it's not just, they're not just making up new varieties and throwing them out there. They are built off of pre-existing varieties. So I think the risk is rather low that you're going to have any issues. So I think maybe it's a bit of a mindset that if we could get those darn brewers to go a little faster, I think the rest of the supply chain would be there to deliver some good results. So kind of, I tried to summarize it, the view that we're in a pretty good place, Limagrain and others. So I take the breeding community in general should be applauded for doing some good work, because I think we're in a pretty good place. Barley's performing quite well. Anne-Marie said a couple times, you need a cereal crop in the rotation. And if we keep seeing these new varieties come through, that's going to help the long-term prospects for farmers growing barley instead of wheat or other crops. So generally a very positive story. If all we need to do is speed up the process, I guess that's a reasonable goal.
I mean, I don't remember the name of the variety that Jens was talking about, but also if you think back to our conversation around fertilizer shortages and things like that, having a variety that has a much lower nitrogen demand, is a really useful thing to have in your repertoire.
Yeah. So disease resistance came up a lot, and I think that's addressing climate change, which is there. And I guess if we try to capture really quickly, Danielle, some highlights, Limagrain, a French cooperative, a really strong farmer base. They are inherently long-term focused. So they play the long game, as I use to say often, and I think that's very good. So they're not switching from that perspective. So that's very good, because they will keep applying all those efforts. So that's what I get to the optimistic part of it. I think is quite good. Collaboration was mentioned. And that's always the way. And I think the industry does collaborate very well. So, and I guess that's a testament to all the improvements that we've already delivered. But I guess if we pass the message to anyone, is there's more that we could do. It's only going to help the whole supply chain going forward. So if we can move a bit faster and grab these further pipeline improvements, better for everyone.
Absolutely. And looking forward to chatting next week for episode 25, which I would have to think of a milestone related to the number 25.
Yeah, it's the silver anniversary or something. I guess we'll do it. I think next week we're going to maybe take a trip back over to the UK. I think we've got some really unique brewing approach. So stay tuned. Back to hear from a UK brewer that's doing some pretty amazing things. So I guess that's a little teaser for the silver anniversary.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Yes.